Namaste and a very good evening to all of you. A hearty welcome to our beloved panelists, Professor Kumar, Suresh and Professor Rishikesh, Professor M.K. Sridhar sir, President of CESS, the dignitaries, participants, ladies and gentlemen, for today's panel discussion on Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan Bill 2025, Context, Principles and Policy Considerations. So let us begin this session by offering our humble pranams to the Almighty. Shuklam Baradaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadhanam Dhyayet Sarvavighnopashante. Thank you. So, CESS, recognized by ICSSR under the Ministry of Education, Government of India, has been consistently engaging with various stakeholders in education, including policymakers, academic institutions, researchers, and practitioners, to realize its vision of social transformation through and with education. So, in this endeavor, CESS Talk series is one such initiative to draw the attention of the stakeholders and the education fraternity on various trending topics and issues in the education sector through talks from the experts. So before we proceed, I just like to inform the participants of a small change in today's panel. Professor Shashikala Vanjari Madam couldn't join the session today because of an emergency. So in her absence, Professor Kumar Suresh sir has joined us for the discussion. So going ahead, the focus of today's session is the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan VBSA Bill 2025, which has been introduced to reorganize the regulatory framework governing higher education in India. The VBSA Bill 2025 provides for the constitution of the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan as a commission with three distinct councils responsible for regulation, accreditation, and the academic standards. So given the relevance of these provisions for universities and other higher educational institutions, there is a need for an informal discussion of the bill. So in this context, today's panel discussion aims to enable participants to understand the proposed reforms under the VBSA bill, the regulatory framework it envisages, and their implications for higher education institutions within the scope of the bill. So to deliberate on this bill, we are joined today by two distinguished panelists with extensive experience in higher education policy, governance, and institutional leadership. We have with us Professor Kumar Suresh, Dean, Academic and Research, Director, Planning and Development, Professor, and the former head of the Department of Educational Administration at the NIEPA, a deemed to be university under the Ministry of Education, Government of India. He has also served as Registrar in charge at NIEPA and as Honorary Professor at the Central University of Kerala. He is a recipient of Summa Cum Laude on successful completion of the course on decentralization and governance at the Institution of Federalism, University of Fribourg, Switzerland. Spanning over 34 years of research, teaching, and academic career, Professor Suresh has worked extensively in the areas of identity, equity, inclusion, and diversity management, federalism and decentralization, and also education policy and governance. He has led large multi-state research projects and policy-oriented studies, including major evaluation of 26 schemes of the UGC conducted at NIEPA. He has been associated with multi-country research initiatives of UNESCO and is currently leading a multi-country institutional research group involving African and Asian countries. He has also served on several expert committees of the UGC and other national bodies and has made extensive contributions to academic leadership, research, and policy engagement. A warm welcome to you, sir, to the session. Also, we have for the session today Professor Rishikesh, Registrar of Azim Premji University, Bengaluru. With over 25 years of experience in teaching and research, he began his career as a teacher-educator, focusing on innovative pedagogical practices and the study of teaching and learning processes in schools. He has been associated with Azim Premji Foundation for more than 2 decades, contributing significantly to educational research and policy engagement. He currently serves as the Registrar of Azim Premji University. His research interests include education policy, learner assessment, and teacher education. He was also a member of the Technical Secretariat to the Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan Committee that drafted National Education Policy 2019. We are pleased to have him as part of today's panel discussion. A warm welcome to you as well, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now I request Professor Kumar Suresh, sir, to take over the session. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Dharani. My namaskar to Professor M.K. Sridhar sir and all the esteemed participants. Also, Professor Rishikesh for co-panelist in this session. I'm happy to be part of this discussion. We had a discussion on this theme. And when the book bill has been introduced, a lot of discussions are taking place across the country. But it is really, really important for us to reconnect to the entire idea of introducing such a bill. What I propose to do in next 20 to 25 minutes, three, four components of my deliberation. First of all, I would like to situate the bill Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan bill in the overall context of transformative reforms which has been proposed by the National Education Policy 2020. That is the first thing. Second component would be that what is the rationale of introducing this bill or creating a single architecture of regulation of higher education. That would be the second component of my deliberation. Third component would be that what are the salient feature of this bill in terms of its regulatory framework and what are the major key principles. I would also like to highlight some of the apprehensions expressed by some of the institutions or concerned scholars about the bill. Of course, I'll also be highlighting and I'll share my perspective on this bill. Coming to the very first idea of locating or situating this bill in the overall context of national education policy. I always take a position that national education policy, of course, Professor Sridhar has been one of the architects in the entire development of national education policy. The national education policy, to my understanding, offers a lot of possibilities of transformative change in higher educational system and the entire idea of introducing change in the sector of higher education is very much linked to the idea of emerging power of our nation at the global level. All of us are aware that now India represents the second largest higher education system in the world with more than 4 crores, 4.33 as per the All India Survey of Higher Education report 2021-22. Of course, provisional report, data are also available, but I'm citing the data which is already in public domain. So this is the size, more than 4.33 crore students in higher education, enrollment in higher education institutions. Similarly, 1.5 million teachers, nearly 1,200 universities, more than 13,000 stand-alone institutions, and quantum jump in terms of gross enrollment ratio in higher education. At the moment, as per the official data, it is 28.4%. But when the next year data is released, it would be roughly around 30%. So our projection is 50% by year 2035. If this is our current scenario of higher education, say size of higher education system in India, we have every reason to think about our global leadership role. But thinking about global leadership role in higher education also necessitates a globally competitive higher education system. Are we prepared for that? Of course, Indian higher education today stands at a crossroad which offers lots of possibilities. But at the same time, we have to also work in different aspects of higher education to ensure that our higher education system is globally competitive. The national education, to my understanding, and that if in the very beginning I mentioned that national education policy, to my understanding, is a treasure of ideas, number of possibilities. We may have some of us may have that how it will be implemented, what are the challenges, etc. That is different thing. But this is a treasure of idea, and therefore the roadmap for implementation is very very important. And if we recall, in the case of higher education, the national education policy had included number of ideas. And if we are envisioning a globally competitive higher education system, definitely some of the global practices we have to be also connected with. And we cannot cut off from the entire global reality. This विकसित भारत शिक्षा अधिष्ठान, the kind of architecture which has been suggested in the bill form, that is also a kind of tool for realizing some of the ideas which are already highlighted in the national education policy. Just I'll draw to your attention. For example, the national higher education, national education policy has already highlighted that we envision robust higher education system, globally competitive higher education, which should be multidisciplinary. Idea of multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and gone are the days when we used to think about higher education system as disconnected in a form of disciplinary silos. So now it is talking about multidisciplinarity. Secondly, it is also talking about flexibility. Flexibility and flexible learning experience of students in the higher educational institutions. It is also talking about, and a variety of possibilities have also been suggested in the national education policy, how this flexibility can be enhanced in the area of higher education system, so that a student can learn at their own pace. Similarly, idea of autonomy, institutional autonomy, in the case of higher education is yet another very important, say recommendations in national education policy. If we take combine all these recommendations and we search for possibility how it can be say realized, when we are talking about Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan, it cannot be seen in isolation. In fact, the entire say Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan is in a way a realization of all these possibilities and putting together in a framework to realize some of these ideas and translating these ideas into working reality. So that is how I understand the full idea and say logic of bringing together all regulatory institutions. Of course, a specific points of reference in these bills are there, which I definitely talking about. But whenever we are talking about this bill, we cannot forget all these aspects of national education policy. Very important recommendations have already been made in the national education policy, which very just two words, light but tight regulation, and it communicates really really very deep meaning in the these two words, light but tight. So it is also announcing a kind of departure from our past practices, that the entire higher education regulation and governance is not to be seen or treated in the form of control and command. Now, if we are also aspiring to a globally competitive higher education system, it cannot be possible unless institutional autonomy is provided. Of course, the whole idea of autonomy, which has been envisioned in the national education policy, in one way or the other, which is getting reflected in this bill, that is not without inherent, say, component of accountability. We cannot talk about just autonomy and just forgetting about accountability. The whole idea of light but tight regulation very much articulates the idea of intertwined concern of autonomy and accountability. These are not two, it cannot be approached that these two are moving in two different directions. Not at all. So those who are well-performing institution, the regulatory structure which is proposed to be in place, which is very much in line with the recommendation of national education policy and enabling provisions of the University Grants Commission through a series of guidelines issued during last 2-3 years. This would definitely enable a kind of autonomy for the institution which are well performing. They can say formulate their own curriculum. They can also think about variety of possibilities of introducing flexibility in terms of curriculum and also in internal functioning of the institution also. So it is in this context that I would like to see the merit of this bill. And if we specifically focus that rationale of bringing together this bill, what is the rationale? In fact, many people have taken. I was also following some of the discussions which have also been in place after this introduction of the bill, and many say people may like to take the view that earlier we had UGC Act. Act for say AICT Act or NCT Act, Council of Architecture. All these institutional structures were in place. While to bring all these structures into a single regulatory framework. This, if the bill is proposing to bring together this institutional structure, it is not without coherence of logic. Very much coherence is there in the entire idea of bringing this structure in a unified framework. If we are thinking about, say, excellence in teaching, research, and innovation, if we are thinking about our globally competitive higher education system, definitely this is an important, say, way to engage with the whole idea of higher education. Yeah, our experiences suggest that the way we have been working in this case, there have been large number of issues in our regulatory structures. Needless to add, it is not just the first time we are talking about this. Way back in 2009, if I remember correctly, the National Knowledge Commission, the Jaspal Committee, for example, Jaspal Committee had already recommended for National Commission for Higher Education and Research in 2009. The idea was also to bring together this regulatory structure in place. However, this remained only an idea. Now we are already having a bill, and in coming months, this will be also maybe some kind of modification if needed, since the bill has already referred to the Parliamentary Standing Committee, departmentally related Parliamentary Standing Committee. There could be also possibility of here and there minor modification. But now the idea is getting concretized. And therefore, quite often the concerns have been used that if we have these multiple regulatory structures in higher education institution, that has also created a situation of conflict of interest. There has been also, say, confusion in terms of say jurisdictional competence of each of the structures. I'm just reminded of course, we have limitation of time. I would not take much time on going back to the history, but all of us are aware that the case of Delhi University in 2012, when the Delhi University at that point of time had introduced four-year undergraduate program, and in some of the programs were also given the nomenclature of BTech. And there, at that point of time, there was tussle between UGC and say AICT. This kind of examples have already been in place. Forget about this kind of cases. Even today, if any university is proposing to introduce, say any course, one course may be in teacher education, another could be in, say engineering, yet another could be architecture, and such and such, courses and programs. If any university proposes to do so, the university has to approach multiple, institutional structures or regulatory bodies. The bill is proposing that on single umbrella kind of a structure would be there, and that is Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan. It is not again in control and command mode. It is also talking about that within this umbrella organization, umbrella body, there would be three important structures which would be relatively autonomous. And all of us are aware about. One would be regulatory council, second assessment council, third would be, of course, a standard setting council. So the idea here is to resolve the conflict of interest. It is not just one institution which is concerned about funding, regulation, standard setting. It is not. So the functional separation of role and responsibility is one of the requisites of efficient administration and outcome-based governance in the case of higher education. And therefore, this will help us in resolving this kind of issues and bringing together the core concern in effective governance and excellence in higher educational system. This is so. In terms of this three bodies, that is really important. So each of these bodies, regulatory, assessment, and a standard setting, they have already well defined, say framework of operation. They have already been identified that what will be the role. Regulatory. Sorry, what will be the role and responsibilities of each of these structure, not overlap. That is one. The second very important point I would also like to highlight here, that the composition and membership pattern in all these structures have also been highlighted. Many times the issues are being highlighted. The bill is perhaps in control and command, leading to centralized decision making, leading to or erosion of federal principle. To my understanding, when I go through the membership pattern, it is not very substantive argument raised by many of scholars, experts, or concerned citizens. Not essentially. Because first of all, we have to see that what is the pattern of membership. Membership pattern, for example, in the Shiksha, say the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan, 14 members are there. Representative, expert, domain expert, academicians, a state representative, a representative from, say, a state higher education institution of national importance. So this, the diversity of representation is there, representing interest of variety of institution. If it is so, definitely that is one of the affirmation that yes, it would provide a kind of consultative view about the whole idea of working or bringing any change in higher education system. Secondly, it is also important to note that the bill is not say eroding any power of the state with regard to establishment of university, funding of institution of higher education, including universities and colleges, and regulating their own say institution. It is not. It is more to bring together a kind of harmony. And if we are talking about say credential, if we are talking about credit system, if we are talking about say credit transfer, it cannot be possible unless we have a kind of this kind of a structure, and this structure can facilitate credit mobility across the state. So it is not essentially to undermine the value of any state or undermine the jurisdictional competence of any of the state government. It is we cannot just also forget that our Constitution has mandated also maintenance of minimum standards in higher education under entry number 63 of the Union list. And if it is so, definitely this is very much justified, and the bill provides a framework of cooperative federalism. If if we come to the basic principle, of course, some of the things I may be little more elaborating during discussion, and if there is any query, but few points I would like to highlight as a key principle of this whole idea of Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan. One is the idea of maintaining transparency in governance. If it is talking about say self-disclosure. So self-disclosure is also announcing a kind of departure from the earlier practice of just compliance mode, inspection-driven kind of approval process based on number of say papers, etc. That is also self-disclosure is one of the important way of understanding the good governance practices, and that is really important one. It is based on self-disclosure, audit. Some of our scholars may be also saying that the clause of penalty is too harsh. No, it is not. Penalty against whom? Penalty against those institutions which are not giving correct information. Of course, there could be possibility of some kind of negotiation in this regard. Further, it can be also worked out. But definitely, if it is a self-disclosure system and if we are announcing departure from inspection mode of the entire approval process to more self-disclosure based principle, definitely that is important. But definitely, I would like to submit for your consideration that transparency, accountability, autonomy with certain conditionality, these are the basic aspect of the new bill, and I do not find much problem in terms of the architecture of this bill, and three substructure or say relatively autonomous structure. So to my understanding, this may be considered as a welcome step by the union government to bring about the more structure for improving functioning of the institutions of higher education. And I would like to take very optimistic view that if these kind of structures are there, of course, it will depend on the operational context. But my impression and also my idea understanding is that this kind of a structure can also act as a tool of institutional excellence in higher education in coming years and decades. And by 2047, we have a goal of Viksit Bharat, and I consider that this could be an important tool and pathway for our achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat. So with this, I stop here. I'm sure that there will be a number of questions and queries. I will be happy to elaborate on some of these provisions in more detail. I'm also starting with this premise that perhaps the bill is available to all of you and you have gone through the say policy. So I did not intend to repeat the provision clause wise. That was not the intention. So broader idea have been I have highlighted, but during our course of discussion, we may have more elaboration on each of the components. So I stop here, Dr. Dharani. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. So you explained how this proposed framework is seeking to reduce the overlapping functions of the regulatory framework, and then you also outlined the rationale and key principles on which it is based. So mostly this will set a direction for the discussion ahead. So now I request Rishikesh ji to please take over the session and tell us about the implications and impact of this bill on the higher education system. Over
Thank
to
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dharani ji. I would like to begin by thanking you and everyone at CESS for having this panel discussion and inviting me. Namaste to Professor Sridhar and Professor Kumar, my co-panelists. And it's really my pleasure to be here. I'm going to focus today on the implication of this bill when it comes into force. Professor Kumar has already very clearly and in a very simple manner articulated what really is in store in the bill. So if this comes into force, then what kind of implications and impact would it have on higher education institutions, our governance practices, and in what way it could enhance the future direction, moving faster and more closely aligned to what already has been put out for us through the National Education Policy 2020. All of you would have a copy of the bill, I'm sure, and I think what is very, very crucial for us to understand or appreciate is what is there right in the beginning of the bill, right? What is written there even before the chapter 1. It very clearly says that this is a bill to enable and empower the higher education institutions to achieve excellence in teaching, learning, research, and innovation through coordination and determination of standards. So one is that as to what is it that one has to achieve excellence in and through what? Coordination and determination of standards. And then it goes on to conclude that paragraph by saying that higher education institutions will be facilitated through the bill to become independent, self-governing institutions and to promote excellence through a robust and transparent system of accreditation and autonomy. And for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto is what it says. So these are some very, very key words and phrases that are there. And during the time when this is going to come into force and during the time when this will be at force, these are the words and phrases that all of us need to look up to for direction while many things are being implemented at HEIs, and at the same time while the powerful councils that are going to be established are going to look at what is happening. So it's just as important for the 58 or so council members, both at the Apex Commission as well as the 3 councils that Professor Kumar shared us with, and all of us by now are familiar. Now, these 58 members who are part of these councils will have to appreciate very, very clearly what these words and phrases mean and what is it that it is directing us towards. So that is something which is very, very crucial. So what kind of implications would it have on higher education institutions is what we would try to focus on. I'm going to do a couple of things here. One, I'm going to look at as to what is it that the National Education Policy put out as part of its provisions and how much of that the bill is taking into account as part of its uh, core principles, and how much of it we need to probably bring in as the implementation would continue. And I would also try and bring in a few examples in terms of what currently is in practice and what could probably change. Now, when you look at as to what is it that the bill is trying to do, we need to go back to the NEP, which is talking about the reformative path for higher education. Professor Kumar already placed it in front of us. Let's reiterate some of it. One of the key things that the NEP talks about is establishing very large multidisciplinary higher education institutions. And we just have probably not even a handful, just a couple of such large institutions wherein we have 25,000 students enrolled. Now, if we are to move to a state wherein 50% of our youth 18 to 23 are enrolled in higher education institutions, which means from the current 4.33 crore is the number that Professor Kumar shared with us. So from about this 40 million, we will have to, which is about 30% of the GER at this point of time, we have to move to about 75 million, right? So 7.5 crore is the kind of enrollments that we are looking at. So now NEP is very clear that this enrollment is not by doubling the number of universities that we currently have or the colleges under these universities. So 1,400, 1,500 universities becoming 3,000 is not the way that NEP is proposing. NEP is very clear that the current institutions have to become larger. They have to become many things, but to begin with, to ensure that we have the capacity to move up to a state wherein we have 50% GER, the current universities have to become much larger to be able to enroll many more students, which also means a large number of colleges, which are affiliated colleges under these universities, which will also necessarily have to become larger and have to get on to accreditation path wherein they move on to becoming autonomous. Now, in this bill, I feel there is some kind of a restriction in terms of up to where autonomy would be available for higher education institutions such as colleges. But I think that is something that can keep getting negotiated. But then it is very clearly articulated that higher education institutions have to move towards that path of achieving autonomy. Now, whether that autonomy finally would allow them to grant a degree or not has, as NEP suggests, is not really articulated here, but that's for a later day. The most important step is to really become institutions which can have the kind of enrollments that NEP envisions, which is what would help us reach the goal of ensuring that 50% GER is there in our higher education institutions. The other aspect that comes from NEP is the academic bank of credits, because that would allow the key principle of multiple entries and multiple exits from higher education institutions. Now, there was a lot of criticism, of course, when the policy came out on multiple entry and exit not being suitable. But if those who have read Dr. Kasturi Rangan committee's report, they would be very clear as to why the multiple entry and exit has been proposed. It is going to be advantageous to students at multiple levels. Students who wish to come in and study for a few years, go out, get the practical experience, come back and continue the study from where they left off. These are huge advantages in the kind of world that we are moving into. So people who actually understand which way the world is moving in, what is it that youth are desiring, will understand the beauty and the right time at which multiple entry and exit kind of a system has been presented. Now, for that to get executed, we need to get on to a credit framework, and which is what UGC has already provided us with, the academic bank of credits. Now, if all institutions across the country needs to get into a state wherein students can move from one to another, there is a certain set of things that will have to get done here, for which some of the actions that the Standards Council, one of the three councils which will be established under the bill, will have to play a very important role. And that is what would finally enable students from most institutions to be able to go to any other institution. If the Standards Council do not provide us with that robust framework, then this would have its own limitations. Then, of course, we have the research focus, which is very, very important. And when we speak of research, obviously, innovation is something that has to be spoken of in the same breath. It is on innovations that research will have to be based. Currently, many of us know, many of us are in the domain of higher education. Research seems to be doing the same thing over and over again, saying the same thing over and over again. Unfortunately, even PhD theses are of the kind wherein the same thing has been rehashed, and presented as a new thesis. So research can't go on this way. Unless research is new, fresh, contributing to solving the problems our society is facing, the research is pretty much useless. So now how do you get all students who would be in our universities, large numbers? I mean, if we are talking of 75 million students, and out of that, about 10-15% being research scholars, one is looking at a very large number. How do you ensure that all these students are looking at researches that are going to be very valuable, and all the remaining 75-80% of the students are also getting prepared to get into research, not necessarily only in academia, but also when they go out to start working. So this entire ecosystem will have to be having a platform in which all the 70-75 million students are thinking with a research mindset. Now, bringing that into our ecosystem is very crucial, and it is also something which at this point of time is very far away, because we are doing very little that kind of research. Maybe our research output has become better over the last couple of decades, but then the quality is a long way to go. And this bill and what it does would go a long way in turning that around. But of course, that is, saying that there is a certain model that would help us do it. But then what is it that we do with that model, which is coming through this bill, is very, very crucial. And that is where I will come into this question of what is it that the bill is bringing, and how is it that it would help us move in the right direction. One of the key things that we will have to ensure, and it is through the discussions like this, and then finally through how the ministry puts into place the processes, that this can be ensured. And that is, we have the Apex Commission, which will have its chairperson and the 12 members. And then we will have the 3 councils, which will have its 3 presidents and the 14 members each. Now, these, which you add up to, is 58 members. So these 58 members have to be the absolutely best, who have, when you say best, who have the best for the country in mind, the best for the higher education domain in mind, the best for this whole ecosystem in mind. So what does it mean? It basically means that these will have to be people not just who have served in the higher education space, collected accolades, been professors for many years, but these are people who have been visionaries already. And we are talking of, in a 1.5 billion population, just finding 60 such fantastic people who would be visionaries. And we already had a group of such visionaries come together under another great visionary like late Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who gave us the policy. Now it's about trying to get similar visionaries from the academia who will think about higher education in that way, with the vision of a Viksit Bharat by 2047, but moving forward in that direction to make this land a place where knowledge blossoms, and a place from where what knowledge comes out is appreciated around the world, which is what Bharat was once upon a time. Right. So now, how do you get, and who should be this 60 people is very, very critical. These will have to be visionaries who are also open-minded, visionaries who are themselves having a very critical mind to look at as to what is happening where, and at the same time, visionaries who are able to accept other points of views and who always, all the time, while they perform their role, keeping in mind what is it that the bill intends to do, what is it that the policy has envisioned. That is very crucial. And once you have these 60 people, there are many things that the policy is saying which will come into action through the bills, and that is when the higher education institutions will start seeing the effect. But till then, the higher education institutions may not see the effect in the way that it is intended, and that is why it is very crucial that this happens, that these are the 60 people, the visionaries, the innovators, the curious minded, who know the world, who know as to what are the standards from around the world, and who are not limited by the limitations that currently exist. And when they come and start implementing these provisions, that is when things will start changing and we will start seeing the impact. So some of the things have got articulated quite nicely in the bill itself. For instance, it is very clearly articulated that there would be curricular autonomy, that there would be a faculty autonomy provided. Now, it is very important when the commission gets established as to what do they mean by that is explicitly stated. Because once it's explicitly stated by the commission that will be established, that is when every higher education institution would be able to appreciate it. So hence it is very important for people who would come in as part of the commission to be able to articulate this in the right manner. One of the things that the bill is doing is it is bringing together some of the things that were happening across 3 different agencies: the UGC, the AICT, the NCT, for instance. Now, just by bringing them together, nothing is going to change, right? If by bringing these together and the commission continuing to do what currently, let's say, the 3 bodies are doing, very little is going to change. So by bringing it together and looking at what is it that the higher education institutions today require and interpreting it that way and laying out that roadmap is when things are going to change. So when we say regulation, for instance, if we look at the functions of the regulatory council, it is very clearly articulated in terms of what are those key ideas on which there is going to be a focus. Other than it being a common regulator, there is the focus that is going to be there on public disclosure by higher education institutions. Now, what is it that will be the focus of this public disclosure will come from the council. The bill articulates a few things, but then where would the focus be? What would the emphasis be on will come from the council, and it is very crucial for the council to understand what should be the disclosure. And that is really where the change will have to happen from what currently happens in terms of regulation. Professor Kumar spoke about this phrase, light but tight, right? That's coming from the policy. Now, the regulatory council should bring in that light but tight principle in spirit and in practice into the public disclosure. You can't come in here into public disclosure and give a long list of things that every institution will have to disclose, which will have to be updated every month, because then the energy of an institution would get sucked into something like that, right? So one is expecting here the council to come and say, what is it that is most crucial for public disclosure so that there is accountability that is fixed. So there would be financial audited statements that would be very crucial to ensure that commercialization doesn't happen, right? So the other point that the regulatory council needs to look at is that there is anti-commercialization. So how does that one do that? Not through, again, a long list of things that are sought by the higher education institutions, but simply by ensuring that audited financial statements are there out for a public disclosure, which ensures after that one doesn't need to go back there, because anytime the council wants to check, it will check. And if there is a discrepancy there, that is really when the penalty clauses and other things would come into play. So it's very simple. There is no witch hunting here. There are no laborious long processes that currently happen. it is a simple two-step activity that would ensure there is accountability as well as anti-commercialization. Now, the council needs to think in this way as to these are the roles and these are the principles on which NEP has stated some of these, and now how do we make this come alive and ensure that higher education institutions are benefited. The other point of the council is that this regulation has to ensure not just that the ones that are not performing well are penalized or reminded that they are straying, but at the same time, the regulations should also ensure that the institutions that are performing well needs to be supported. So currently, if you look at the regulatory framework, it looks at the entire ecosystem in the same way, and institution that does very well and institution that doesn't or isn't doing as well, violating principles, are all put in the same basket, and everyone needs to do the same things. And one is seeing that the focus is going away from ensuring those who are not following certain principles are not mending their way, right? That focus is not there because it's got dissipated. So when institutions are doing well, they need to be encouraged and they need to move ahead doing more and more. And hence the regulatory council needs to ensure through the provisions in the bill that these constraints that exist for very good institutions is removed, and the frameworks ensure that those institutions that aren't doing well are the ones that are brought onto the right path through various mechanisms. Now, this is the change that we hope we will see through the bill, because this is what the bill is intending to do, right? The other council is supposed to help in this. The accreditation council hence has to come in and help in this. It is supposed to ensure that it is showing as to what is the path, what is the way forward for each of the higher education institution. And that is why the accreditation framework will have to become much more simpler. In fact, the policy itself had suggested that it has to be in a binary model, right? Wherein there is just not so many things that needs to be accounted for, but then very simply showing the direction for the university, and every time that there is a right step or right level reached, the university is getting accredited. But that's not the end of the story. Accreditation would be endless, and you keep moving in the right direction, getting better and better accreditation. So it's not just about labels, right? Accreditation is a journey. Accreditation is a journey that higher education institutions would be encouraged to take to move in that right direction of becoming excellent teaching and research institutions or places of learning, excellent places of learning. Now, for this, again, the bill has once again reiterated what the policy said, that it has to move from a model which has been input based to a model that is outcome based. But that's easier said than done. What do we mean by outcome based frameworks? We can't come up with certain standards wherein one says outcome based frameworks would mean that X percentage of students enrolled would have X percentage of marks, or would be X percentage would be of certain percentile. That's how we look at it today. That's how, for instance, our schooling system looks at it, and that kind of follows into the higher education system as well, because very little thought has been given. If a college which has been set up in a very, very disadvantaged region, wherein first generation schoolgoers have entered higher education and they are learning to research and they are becoming higher education scholars, one cannot go there and put in a marker saying that this is the percentage that all these students would have to reach, because this is an outcome based framework. And just because that there is a college in a cosmopolitan city wherein advantageous students are coming in and enrolling, and there a certain average has been set, and one cannot take that and say now this is a high standard and all institutions will have to meet this standard because we are going to look at outcome based framework. Now, many times when one says outcome based, immediately given of course the way we have been operating for many decades now, we start thinking of outcomes is equal to the kinds of marks scored and the kinds of ranks achieved, the number of gold medals. But then if one reads Dr. Kasturirangan committee's report, one can very easily understand that outcome is not about that. It is about as to what are the learning objectives that were set and how much of that learning objectives have been grasped by the students, and how ready are they now to go out there into the society and ensure that the skills that they have equipped themselves with are put into practice. Now, it's not very easy to kind of measure this and look at this, but then all that I'm saying is that Accreditation Council hence has its hands full to try and understand what does this mean, and what does this mean in the different domains in which our higher education institutions operate in. There are engineering colleges, there are arts and science colleges, there are institutions such as ours exclusively focusing on the social sector. Now, what you would put in as an outcome, as indicators in an outcome-based framework for an engineering college will not apply to the programs that are offered, for instance, from institutions such as ours, wherein our focus is completely on the developmental sector. Now, the Accreditation Council needs to look at as to hence how do they come up with a framework which is applicable to these diverse kinds of institutions that exist in our ecosystem. Right? Finally, I'll come to the Standards Council and close here so that we have enough time for Q&A. So on these lines now, what is hence that Standards Council will have to provide us with, which will encourage our students to be learning in the best institutions and ensuring that they reach their optimum best, right? That's really what the Standards Council's mandate is, that are the students in higher education achieving those things that they have set out to, and those graduate attributes that all of us need to acquire through our higher education, is it coming through? And what are hence the standards that need to be in place for that? One of the things, for instance, continuously that gets measured is, for instance, faculty standards. Now, how do you put out faculty standards? Today, invariably, the default is how many of the faculty in a higher education institutions have a PhD. Now, that is, as we all know, very, very limiting, because PhD from different kinds of institutions today are of different quality. So just by counting the number of PhDs in a higher education institutions will not ensure that the faculty standards have been met. In fact, we all know that there are some absolutely fantastic practitioners without a PhD who are excellent teachers who can bring in so much to our higher education institution. Now, how will the Standards Council be creating a framework for that? That someone who's worked 30, 40 years on the field, gained so much of expertise, has not bothered to get a PhD, but then has so much of knowledge in them. And if they are to come in and an institution is recruiting them as faculty so that there are hundreds of students who benefit from that person's experience and knowledge, then that person's wealth of knowledge and that person's value will have to be accounted for in the faculty standards. So faculty standards cannot be measured very narrowly as it gets done now. Just for instance, another measure is how many peer-reviewed journal articles have faculty written. Yes, it's important that faculty write. It's important that faculty do research. But then just a mere count that way is not sufficient. The reform has to be in terms of what is that research about and where has that research contributed. Contributing to a peer-reviewed journal is insufficient. Has that research contributed for some real-life problem that our society faces? Has it contributed to solving that to some extent, at least be giving new ideas for that old problem, right? So I'll stop here. So these are the kinds of things that will change in terms of how these things which are currently looked at will get looked at, or the bill will force people to be looking at that way. But then it would also depend on who are these 58 people who will help us, guide us in going on that direction that the bill has a goal for and what the policy envisages. Thank you. I'll stop.
Rishikesh ji, thank you so much. It was very insightful to listen to, how accreditation is going to be, regulations is going to be, and when setting standards, and as you said, bringing in the right uh, people into the commission becomes more important to take this effectively forward. And I request all the participants to leave your questions in the Q&A box. And there are few questions that has been already answered by Professor Kumar Suresh sir in the Q&A section itself. Sir, before going ahead, I have one question with you because definitely there will be some kind of ambiguity, that the institutions must be facing during this transition. They might be worried what will happen with respect to accreditation, how we have to work and all. And even regulation setting standards and also what is that the institution should consider or should keep in mind during this period, because the bill is still not operational, and there might be many premature thinking among the institutions and the stakeholders. So how should they come out of this ambiguity, or how should they set the direction?
Uh,
Any
Dr. Dhani,
anyone among both of you? Yeah.
okay, yeah, thank you. Of course, I have not specifically spoken on this, but really a very important point you have raised. So far, assessment accreditation quality assessment is concerned, it should not be the entire institutional effort should not be reduced to all. We are aware about, we have considerable idea about quality itself. It should be holistic understanding about quality, not merely in terms of quantifiable measurables. Of course, that would be the basis of assessment accreditation. But even if in the first place, the current framework which is in place, of course, NAC has not been, it is not accepting fresh application unless new, framework comes into place. But in case of this bill, it has already been indicated that the current the framework will remain unless it comes into place. So that is one answer to this. But if you are, say, indicating that during this period of transition, what the institution should do, institution will not stop working. Institution will not stop thinking about publication, research. Already, national education policy has provided us, say, kind of, idea, and UGC guidelines. Number of UGC guidelines following the recommendation of NEP 2020. Those guidelines provide us important opportunity to work towards its implementation, to move, and also defining our own pathways for institutional excellence, faculty excellence, meaningful teaching and research. So all these are already in place. As and when the bill takes shape, concrete shape after the approval of after the bill is an act, other things will follow. Definitely, that is not the case. But institutions cannot and shall not stop functioning on this. It is not a kind of situation of crisis, not at all. It is not also a situation of confusion, not. I do not interpret like that. Because we have considerable, as institution of higher education, we have considerable idea about what we are supposed to do if institutions are doing, not essentially undermining very quality parameters. Even if when NAC was in place, when NIRF was not in place, it is not that there was no quality. Quality of we had peer peer culture of monitoring quality, internal mechanism to ensure the quality in the institution. So that was also there. Now, the global practice of assessment, accreditation, ranking by external agencies those are coming in place. And that is, of course, it is also mandating institution to move in this direction, that there could be valid ground to say that, yes, at this level of measurement on measurable parameters, we stand at this level. So that is just a kind of affirmation of your quality, that yes, we are quality institution. But you will remain quality institution even if you are not ranked and assessed. So therefore, we should continue working. And as I say, that national education policy, unlike earlier policies, I may be wrong, unlike earlier policy, it has given us a number of possibilities to work, think, and define our own pathways. That is the idea.
Yeah. Rishikesh, sir, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think
Uh,
Professor has articulated it quite clearly on
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Sir, here is a question to you, Rishikesh, sir. How does outcome-based regulation differ from input-based regulation?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, some bit of it I already shared when I was
Yeah, yeah.
speaking.
Yeah.
Many of the input-based regulations would look for what is it that exists within an institution, right? And it is based on that there are evaluations that are made. So do you, for instance, have the number of classrooms that are required? Now, just to take that example, what an outcome based framework would instead look at is what is happening within that classroom. Yes, it is important that you have adequate infrastructure, but then what happens within that is also very crucial. And that is really where the outcome is looked at. So when one looks at outcome, hence, even the processes become important. So, and that is what I was saying, that outcome just doesn't mean what are the percentiles or the percentages that come out of exams, but then outcome basically also means what is it that the students are getting equipped with, right? We talk about the graduate attributes. Are the students getting equipped with that? For instance, we have about 12 to 15 million students who graduate out of our higher education institutions every year. Now, it is very critical for us that these 15 million are highly capacitated in whatever discipline that they're studying, highly capacitated in a manner that they're able to actually stand on their own feet, create livelihood opportunities for themselves, and be ready to work in the environment that would be there, which is again fast changing, right? We don't even know that 4 years down the line what are the kinds of roles that would be there for a student who's just joined a 4 year undergraduate program. Now, it is the duty of all of us to ensure that in those 4 years that this student acquires all those graduate attributes which would help them to be able to make their own livelihood opportunities, because we don't even know as to what opportunity would exist there. So the kind of models that we had earlier, that we knew that we can prepare you for this, are there only for very, very specific disciplines. And even for that, they will have to they will have to acquire a research mindset. They will have to acquire an innovative mindset. Even, for instance, as a doctor and an engineer, you may say that a doctor's role would always be available, a job for an engineer would always be available. But if they are not in these 4 years getting into a research mindset, becoming those innovators in what they are doing, 4 years down the line, the role that they will play as a doctor or an engineer would be suboptimal, and very soon they may be out of a job. So to ensure that, and for us, numbers are really the thing, right? To ensure that 15 million of our youth are acquiring those attributes is something that requires the entire nation to come together. And that is what we now have the bill backing us. Now hope that we are able to use this bill to get in that direction. And that's really what is very crucial for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Kumar, sir, this question is for you. How does this bill align with the long-term vision of Viksit Bharat and the goals articulated in NEP 2020? Anyway, we have spoken a lot from the beginning, but how is it going to align with the long-term vision of Viksit Bharat? Sir, could you please unmute, sir?
Sorry. Okay. So thank you, Dharni. So just I was also going through the chat box question, and there are three sets of question. I would like to take up all the question. Three different kinds of concerns have been raised. One relates to federal implication of this bill. I'll answer the first question you have raised. Second is with regard to how this bill is aligning with goal of Viksit Bharat. Third set of question is also about, local and global concerns, how it would be addressed. And fourth, a specific question by Mona Lisa Das about AICT, UGC, NCT, how it will be different. This will be different from earlier bills. Coming to the whole idea of Viksit Bharat, I would also like to re-emphasize here that we should. This bill is basically about regulation, assessment, accreditation. So this is a kind of pushing the idea of Viksit Bharat, which is already reflected in variety of ways in our national education policy. It also gives us a framework to move ahead. This may be considered regulatory framework, assessment, accreditation, extra combined together is intended to provide excellence in teaching, research, learning, innovation, etc. Outcome could be definitely, say, very strengthened higher education system, globally competitive higher education system. For example, if we are talking about internationalization, at the moment it is more oriented towards outflow of a student. Inflow of a student is very low. But if we have a globally competitive higher education weaved around this idea, certainly in coming years and decades, it could be an important destination for pursuing education. So that is one. So therefore, the whole idea of NEP 2020 and the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan, this is a kind of institutional structure. It is a kind of institutional structure to shape some of the ideas, to implement some of the ideas through variety of means. But it is not wholesome answer to each and everything, because already we have different aspects, and each of the aspects have been taken care by UGC, existing UGC, say regulations or guidelines, etc. For example, say incorporation of Indian knowledge system in our curriculum. That is one example. Of course, it is already in place. How to transform the single disciplinary institution into multidisciplinary institution. How we can go ahead with the idea of flexibility through credit and credit framework and 4-year undergraduate courses, etc. So all these ideas are already there. How this idea would be implemented, how these ideas are getting implemented by the institutions of higher education institution. This bill, and when the regulatory architecture is in single regulatory architecture is in place, having three councils, definitely these concerns will be taken care of. And of course, some kind of monitoring, some kind of through this self disclosure and other, that would be definitely in place. So that is how I look at this. Second, with regard to the major apprehension is being raised, that perhaps it is leading towards over centralization, and it is against the idea of cooperative federalism. In the beginning, I already pointed out, and 4 5 questions have been raised. It is not essentially. I say that it could be approached from twin perspective. One, does it say propose any departure from say earlier constitutional principle? It is not saying that even a state university has to be established by central government, and establishment of any state university has to be essentially approved by the regulatory body. Not. The state has been given the right to to retain the right to establish and also fund and run their own institutions. So there is no contradiction in this regard. Second, if we in the very beginning I said that membership pattern, in the membership pattern, if you see, earlier it was not essentially, it may be random, not essentially stated in UGC Act or anywhere that essentially all the member from a state institution and others should be essentially part. It was, the membership was of course representative, but now it is already written in the say bill that who would be the members. Eminent, say, expert, academician, etc., but representative of a state institution, representative nominated by the state government. So this will definitely, that will provide opportunity for the state. It will depend if the representative of a state, if the representative of a state university, they wish to maintain silence, they are not participating, then there should be also operational context limitations. But they have been given this right to raise their concern, and this could be definitely based on a deliberative process. It is not that arbitrary, so that the member will be taking decision, other members will be taking, not essentially. So that is definitely that kind of autonomy is already inbuilt, to my understanding. So this apprehension is, too much stretched. So far funding, financing is concerned, that may have to also see how the funding and financing of higher educational institutions is being done. That may be a point of discussion for all of us, the financial capacity of a state, etc. But so far, the centralization, approaching the whole idea of centralization in decision making, not essentially the way we are trying to approach. The one of our participant had raised this issue that self-disclosure, we if the bill is talking about, this is like, say, giving this right to a thief. It is not. There is already, say, also monitoring mechanism, whether whenever you are disclosing this, that will be subject to public auditing also. And the structures which are coming in, probably it will be coming soon. Definitely, it will have to also monitor whatever disclosure is being this, and there is also provision that if it is reported that whatever disclosure is being made by the institution, it is false. It is, say, misleading. In this case, the regulatory agency will take disciplinary action. Penalty is there. The university or institution may be de-recognized. The courses may not be allowed to be run by those institutions. Funding under, say, in case of a state institution and others, under, say, 12B out of UGC provision as of now, but there could be also funding cut, or a stopping of funding. So variety of mechanisms are already suggested and inbuilt in the bill. So this self-disclosure is not essentially giving, say, just the kind of thing. It is, of course, in the framework of light regulation, that autonomy to the institution, but it is not that, I said that this is also trying to balance autonomy with accountability. It is not just autonomy without accountability. So these are twin aspect of the entire and well articulated in the bill. That is my answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dharani, I would just like to add to what Professor Kumar
Yes, sir.
shared
Yeah, please.
on
Yes,
this
please, sir.
disclosure bit, right? So, as he rightly said, accountability and autonomy, they go hand in hand, even, in terms of how the policy is articulated. And that is coming through now in the bill through the public disclosure. Now, one of the things, mind shift changes that the policy has articulated is also to look at how we regulate things in our ecosystem to be moved into or based out of trust, right? We've been operating on a framework which is trust deficit on multiple things. In a society, as a society itself, there are multiple examples you can see wherein there is a trust deficit, because of which there are many things that we put into place, and now it's become so hard or so large that even moving ahead has become problematic, right? So the change in the perspective that the policy has tried bringing is that let's move into the trust-based model. So public disclosure comes from that, right? But at the same time, yes, we know that people can abuse something like this, wherein there is a trust imposed, and that is really where the accountability measures come in. In fact, in this context, in our context, the bill, the regulatory council focus would be on public disclosure. In fact, I hope that the members would completely appreciate that point. The council members who would be part of the regulatory council, the first set of council members, very crucial because they really set the standards, the norms in place. So it is the public disclosure that the regulatory council would look at. That is really where they are looking at the accountability. It's not other things that you start digging for and looking for. You decide what the public disclosure ought to be. The public disclosure is there for everyone to see, and the regulatory council is going to basically evaluate that through visits, through various other checks. And when that is found to be not true, is where the other accountability measures of provisions such as penalty and all will come in, right? So that's really the architecture into which we are moving into. So there is a lot of mind shift that will have to take place. Many of us will have to get used to this idea of placing trust, and then hoping that most of us are trustworthy and hence will do the right things. And for those who will try to abuse the system, there is the regulatory framework that will come into play. That's the area into, or the direction in which we ought to move. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Sir, also there are many questions about this rural-urban divide and how this regulation is going to impact. So one among that is, in this fast-changing technology environment. So what is it planned for Tier 2, 3 cities and rural institutions which might struggle to adapt to the new standards? Rishikesh, sir.
See, I had a couple of points as a way forward. In fact, I will bring that in here. We have, out of the 1400 universities, we have about 112, I think, as per the count that I have, which are central universities, right? I would, in fact, wish the way that things would get implemented is that it is the central universities which will lead the way forward, right? In terms of even the commission and the councils ensuring that these 112 central universities are of the highest quality, and that the provisions in the bill are used to ensure that they are in that direction. And then there are about 700 odd state universities. Then using the same mechanisms to ensure that these state universities are again providing education of the highest quality. Now you're basically then ensuring that 70-75% of our universities are providing the highest quality education, right? So once that is done, you are ensuring that out of the 75%, and most of these universities have the capacity to enroll large numbers of students as the NEP envisages. So you are looking at 85%, close to 85-90% of students actually getting high quality education. It's only the remaining ones who would be in the private institutions. And in the private institutions, once you have such a robust public university ecosystem in place, both central and state, you will have only very few who would be going into private universities for very specific requirements. And private universities also would be catering to that market demand only. So the rest of the private universities, which today, let's say, many of private universities today could be just there as a business, right? Using the commercialization aspect, and they will not be able to survive at all. So my thing is that you don't even have to really bother about regulating them straight away. Yes, there would be probably a time that will come when you have to weed some of them out who are still very strongly entrenched, in the ecosystem. But then that should be, the last thing that you would be going to, or something that you take up, once you have more time, more bandwidth, once you understood the processes. So this is really the way forward. And once you do this urban rural divide, this whole question on federal, which of the state is getting what, which state is not getting, all this would go away. Because end of the day, what is really the vision? that, or what is the goal here that we all are trying to get to? A high quality higher education ecosystem in our country, right, which the students would benefit from. Today we all know, whatever said and done, even though we have 40 million students in our higher education institutions, we know that there are only a certain percentage of them who are benefiting from the higher education that they are getting. And that's not sufficient for us to move into or become Viksit Bharat by 47. The percentage of students who are actually benefiting from our higher education today is not sufficient. So that itself has to improve, and then we need to double the enrollment. So in that sense, it's double work that exists, and the way that we can do this very quickly is to ensure that the public institutions really are the role models, and then the private ones which are providing certain kinds of things would continue, and those who are good will continue, and the rest nobody would even go, and they will shut down automatically.
Kumar sir, would you like to add any points to this?
Not necessarily on this point, but there are a number of questions, and
Yes.
it may not be possible to answer all the
Answer all the
questions.
questions. Yes, sir. Yeah.
But quickly, I would like to see. I appreciate the kind of queries raised by participant, and that also shows the kind of engagement that our participants have on this talk. But one point has been raised by one of the participants about inflow of foreign students. So already, I would like to say that all the answers should not be sought in this bill. There are number of enabling provisions which are in the form of UGC guidelines. If you just see, UGC has already issued 3 to 4 guidelines related to internationalization of higher education. I would like to cite just one. 2022, UGC came up with the internationalization, that the name of the guidelines is academic collaboration. So it provides opportunity for training program, dual degree program, joint degree program, etc. Already framework has already been given in the guidelines. And definitely, since I am also heading a center of international cooperation in my institution, and I had a kind of workshop with the international affairs office coordinators or directors. It is really encouraging that during the last 3 4 years, number of memoranda of understanding have been signed by these institutions with foreign institutions, and many institutions are also opening up their thinking to offer courses in this mode. So the first important development would be global connect to our higher education. So internationalization at home. And if internationalization at home is happening, definitely it will be creating a very globally competitive higher education system. And if we are able to prove that yes, we are globally competitive higher education system, definitely will be able to attract foreign student, and not foreign student essentially from Nepal, Bangladesh, and Nigeria and Tanzania, across the country. And that possibility cannot be just undermined and ruled out. But it will be also that institutional preparedness. And I see, based on my interaction with some of the coordinators of international office and supported by data, that perhaps we are moving in this direction. And in coming years and decades, it would be destination not only from Africa and our South Asia regions, but maybe other parts of the world also. So that is my response. And other things already answered by Professor
Yes.
Rishikesh.
It's as you said, there were many questions and some overlapping questions as well. So I need not be like we will be able to take it up, because of time constraints. So as we come to the close of today's session, so Definitely, the discussion, I hope that it has helped place the provisions of this VBSA bill in a little more clearer institutional context. So the points and the questions raised today are likely to be very helpful to the institutions and other stakeholders who have participated today, and it reflects on the proposed framework and and help institutions prepare for the transition ahead. So I'd like to thank Professor Kumar, Suresh sir, and Professor Rishikesh sir for joining us today and for your time and for sharing your insights that have contributed meaningfully to this discussion. Also, on behalf of Center for Educational and Social Studies, I would like to thank all the participants who participated in this discussion and made it more meaningful. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.